Exposed, she was thrown out pregnant and alone discovered the incredible luxury convoy waiting. Sarah stood outside the diner, the evening air thick with the smell of frying bacon and the sound of clinking cups. Life had changed overnight. At 23, she was pregnant and alone. Thrown out of her own home, she had become a shadow of the dependable daughter her family always adored. The news of her pregnancy had unleashed a storm of anger and disappointment from her traditional parents, shattering their once unbreakable bond. How did it come to this? What had she done that was so unforgivable? As she wiped down the counter, her veins pulsed with anxiety. The regulars' familiar faces offered nods of support and kind smiles. But each day felt heavier than the last, and the tightness in her chest threatened to choke her. She thought of her unborn child, a swirl of joy and fear igniting inside her. What kind of life could she offer? Abandoned, sleeping in her old station wagon parked behind the diner, the thought of being homeless stung fiercely. Her dreams evaporated like the steam rising from the coffee pots. Day by day, as she served tables with the same infectious smile, each clatter of silverware felt like an echo of her collapsing world. Friends from the diner noticed her fatigue, whispering questions that made her defenses rise. "I'm fine," she would assure them, but inside, her heart ached with shame. Could she ever go back to the life that once felt safe and sound, one that now felt so distant? Then came the day that would change everything. In an effort to re-establish her independence, Sarah planned a fundraiser aimed at helping other single mothers. But her father, with all his wealth and influence, refused to let her succeed freely. Days before the big event, he cut her off financially, believing that such measures would force her back into the mold he had crafted for her. The night of the fundraiser arrived, bursting with hope and determination. As she stood in front of the gathered crowd, adrenaline coursing through her, the unexpected hum of luxury vehicles interrupted the atmosphere. Like a scene from a movie, sleek cars rolled up and her father stepped out, his expression a mix of disdain and arrogance. He had sponsored the event not to support her, but to undermine her, to show the town that his money could eclipse her efforts. "Sarah," he boomed, cutting through the murmur of voices. "You think you can do this alone? You need me." In a moment that rippled with tension, she stepped forward, shaking with emotion. "No, Dad," she declared, her voice steady yet fierce. "I don't need your money. I need respect." This was her fight, and she'd bring the community together, not to follow his rules, but to challenge them. Support and love bloom from our vulnerabilities, not our bank accounts. Silence fell over the crowd. Faces lit with admiration. This was more than a fundraiser. It was a stand against suffocating expectations and a cry for empowerment. As the crowd erupted in support, Sarah felt the weight of years of hurt hang in the air, thick and ready to burst. Would her father finally see her? Would he realize that the strength of a person is measured not by their wealth but by their heart? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As her father's gaze met hers, Sarah braced herself for the words that could either shatter or heal. The air crackled with tension, and the crowd caught their breath, waiting. What would happen next? Would she remain in the shadows of her father's expectations, or would she step into the light of her own courage? The answer lay in the heart of their unspoken bond, with hope glimmering on the edge. The crowd's anticipation hung heavy in the air, like a storm waiting to break. Sarah's heart raced, each beat echoing in her ears as she locked eyes with her father. His face, a mask of disbelief, morphed into something unexpectedly softer. For a split second, vulnerability flashed behind his steely demeanor, and she wondered if, just for this moment, he could understand her. "Respect," he sneered, but Sarah noticed a tremor in his voice. A flicker of something. Was it fear? danced behind the narrowed eyes that had always seen her as just a disappointment. She pushed through the tension, stepping closer. "Yes, Dad," she said, her voice rising in defiance. "Respect for who I am and what I can do. Look around. These people believe in me." The patrons nodded, murmurings of support rising like a tide behind her. Sarah could feel her heart swell, and for the first time, she didn't feel alone. Her father's disapproval made her earlier fears seem trivial. This was her chance to redefine her narrative, to declare her independence not just from him, but from all the expectations that had weighed her down. Within moments, the crowd surged forward as if her declaration had unleashed a wave of collective determination. Words of encouragement ricocheted off the diner walls. "We've got your back. You're stronger than he knows." Empowered, Sarah turned her attention back to her father. "You built your empire around expectations, but I'm not your legacy. I'm building something real." As she spoke, a realization flooded over her. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for every woman who had ever felt trapped by someone else's dreams. A flicker of anger crossed her father's face, but she could see he was struggling to find his control. "You think this little stunt will change anything?" he replied, but there was less conviction in his tone now, a slight crack that hadn't been there before. "I'm not just playing games. This is my life," she shot back, the fire in her voice unwavering. "It's time I write my own story, one filled with hope, strength, and love. I want to play the role you want me to." In the silence that followed, the crowd seemed to hold its collective breath. Would this finally be the breaking point? Would her father realize that the control he held through money no longer mattered, not when faced with the intensity of her truth? Just then, a woman from the back, a fellow single mother, stepped forward. "You inspire us all, Sarah. You remind us that we can choose our own paths." Applause erupted, shaking the very foundation of the diner. Her heart, once heavy with despair, now soared with every clap and shout of encouragement. It was as if the weight of the world melted away, and for the first time, Sarah could see the glimmer of her future. But then, just as the energy reached its peak, an unexpected voice broke through the applause. "What if your bravery leads you to ruin?" Her father's tone wavered between anger and desperation. "What kind of future will you have for that child?" The crowd stilled, tension rippling through the air once more. Sarah's stomach knotted at the thought. What if he was right? What kind of mother could she be without the safety net he wielded? The fear clawed at her heart, dragging her momentary high back down to earth. Taking a deep breath, she faced her father again. "I'll find a way. I promise you that. And you'll see by deciding to be true to myself, I can create a future that's even brighter than you imagine." As she finished speaking, her voice trembled with emotion. Would he understand, or had she just drawn the line too sharply? The atmosphere was charged with uncertainty, and she held her breath wondering what would happen next. Would he step back and let her forge her own path forward? Or would he push back harder than ever before? The response hung in the air, full of potential, brimming with questions. As Sarah stood at the crossroads of her life, she couldn't shake the feeling that a pivotal moment was at hand, one that could change everything. What would her father choose? The silence in the diner felt like a fog, heavy and thick, wrapping around Sarah as she stood locked in a stare with her father. His expression shifted, a kaleidoscope of emotions flitting across his face: confusion, anger, fear, and something that looked suspiciously like regret. It was a fleeting moment, but it sparked a flicker of hope within her. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for him to see her differently. Then, with renewed fury, he jutted his chin out defiantly. "You think I care about what they want? This is about protecting you and that child." His voice cracked, and for a second, Sarah thought she saw a glimmer of fear hiding behind his bravado. "I'm not a child anymore, Dad," Sarah shot back. "I can take care of myself and my baby." The words hung heavily between them. Her heart raced as she sensed the crowd leaning in, ready for whatever might come next. "Look around," she implored, arms sweeping toward the patrons whose faces now shone with encouragement. "I have support. Real support." She could feel the warmth of their belief, their shared understanding of her struggle. The crowd began to chant, "You can do this," as if uniting in a wave of shared resolve. But her father's face was a rigid mask now. Support? From these people? They want to be there when life gets hard. I'm telling you, this is a mistake. He countered, his rumbling voice cutting through the positive atmosphere. Taking a step forward, Sarah steadied herself. Each heartbeat sounded like a drum in her ears, reminding her of the stakes in this moment. You think I don't know hard? She replied fiercely. I've seen it, lived it. You've been so busy building this empire, you haven't seen how lonely it's made me. I'm choosing love, my own path, can't you understand that? The realization marked the air like the charge before lightning, an impending shift she could feel gathered around her. For the first time, she wasn't just denying him, she was claiming herself, her worth, her future. The crowd erupted with cheers, drowning out the tension. Yet amidst all this, her father's face twisted with panic. What about your security? What about a proper future for your child? His voice cracked, and they all heard his vulnerability now, his desperation spilling out. The tension tightened again, but this time, it felt electric, almost hopeful. Taking a breath, Sarah steadied her resolve. Perhaps my security won't look like yours, but it will be real. I'll raise my baby surrounded by love, not fear. The words became a balm against the hardened expectations he had always stacked on her shoulders. Just then, from the back, a voice rang out, louder than before. She's right. We need each other. That's real strength. It was a firefighter she had met earlier, and he stepped forward to stand beside her. As more voices joined in, Sarah felt the tide shift. Her father's expression turned to stone, but the strength of the people around her felt limitless. You can't control everything, not anymore, she said softly but firmly. You have to let me be. Let me become who I was meant to be. He began, struggling to find the words. The fight tugged at him. He was grappling with a truth he didn't want to acknowledge. You'll regret this. His voice finally faded into the murmurs of the crowd. But what if he was wrong? What if she was capable of building a life, one that didn't depend on the shackles of his expectations? Sarah looked at the people supporting her and felt a rush of determination. I won't regret being true to myself. Suddenly, the door swung open and a new figure stepped through, their silhouette framed by the harsh sunlight outside. Everyone turned to look, and in that moment, Sarah felt a jolt run through her. Was this a new player entering the game, or someone who would bring yet another twist she hadn't expected? As whispers filled the room, all eyes were on the newcomer. Who could they be, and how would they change everything? The stranger stood in the doorway, casting a long shadow that stretched across the diner floor. Sunlight glinted off their sunglasses, partially obscuring their features. Sarah felt her heart race, unsure if the arrival would bring relief or more chaos. Hey, what is going on? The voice broke through the murmurs, rich and confident. The newcomers stepped forward, and as they did, the sun caught their face, a woman in her mid-30s, with a glowing smile that bounced off the nervous energy in the room. It was hard to place her, but Sarah recognized an easy charm that immediately drew attention. Her father blinked, his hard facade slipping ever so slightly as the room held its breath. Who are you? He demanded, crossing his arms like a shield. The woman laughed lightly, placing hands on her hips. Just a friend of Sarah's. I heard there's quite the revolution happening here. She tilted her head, inviting those around to relax. And I'm all for it. The crowd seemed to welcome her presence, slowly leaning back with curiosity. What do you mean? One of the older patrons shouted from the back, eyes wide. Well, I managed to catch the tail end of your talks about support versus protection. She paused, letting her words sink in, glancing at Sarah. What you need, sweetheart, is not just support but a community. She smiled, a brilliant and infectious smile that spread warmth. Sarah could feel something shift inside her. Was this woman truly on her side? It was like she held the promise of something bigger, brighter. Community. Sarah whispered, feeling the truth of it wash over her. It was a word that had been missing in all her discussions with her father. That's what I want. The newcomer nodded. Exactly. You need to know you're not alone. You can create a network of people who will stand by you when things get tough. It's not about just one person being your anchor. Her father, still reeling from the unexpected interruption, turned more pale. You don't know what you're talking about. He barked, his voice thick with disbelief. Oh, but I do, she replied, crossing over to Sarah and taking her hand. It felt solid, a lifeline. I've been in your shoes, and I learned very quickly. A tree with deep roots withstands the fiercest storms. Wait, Sarah said, holding her father's gaze, trying to capture the moment. Is that all you think I have to rely on? Just the roots you've planted? I can grow and thrive wherever I choose. The diner fell silent as Sarah spoke, a new energy crackling with an urgency that felt electric. She felt the stares, heard the barely contained nods of approval. This is what I want. I want to create my own roots, my own community. Boom. The stranger interjected. That's exactly the spirit. She looked around, her eyes brightening. And I'm here to help you with that. In fact, I brought my team. We're setting up a resource center in the neighborhood. A ripple of surprise ran through the diner, sparking a mix of hopeful whispers. What kind of resource center? Someone asked, leaning forward. Community support, childcare, educational workshops, everything mothers like you need. We want to help mothers reclaim their lives, learn they're stronger than they think. As she spoke, Sarah felt a bubbling excitement rise in her chest. Could this really be true? A center where she could learn, grow, raise her child with the backing of a supportive community? But she also felt her father's tension, his looming presence still pressing down on her. What do you think, Dad? She asked, feeling brave. Is this something I could have? Is it really possible? He opened his mouth to argue, but the words didn't come. There was something in her voice, in the hope rising in his chest, pushing against the walls he had built. Before he could respond, the stranger stepped forward. You always have a choice, sir. Your daughter is ready to build her life and chase a future of her own. You can support her in that. Sarah held her breath, every heartbeat counting in the silence. The tension was thick. Would he accept this new path, or would he reject it yet? Again? And just then, a phone buzzed from the woman's pocket, pulling her attention away. Oh, excuse me. As she stepped back, the whispers of the room grew louder, questions being tossed around like a game of catch. But Sarah remained focused on her father, searching for a flicker of understanding. In that charged moment, the door swung open again, and the atmosphere shifted once more. Another figure materialized, sweeping in like a storm, eyes filled with urgency. Sarah, we need to talk. This voice cut like a knife. Who could this new arrival be, and why did it feel like the stakes just got even higher? Sarah turned her head, dread pooling in her stomach as she recognized the figure stepping through the door. Mark, her childhood friend, rushed in, his usually easygoing demeanor replaced by a frantic urgency. He had always been there for her, yet now, with tensions already high, she felt a fresh wave of anxiety. Mark? She questioned, her voice barely a whisper. What is wrong? His eyes darted around the diner before settling on her. I had to find you. It's about your mom. He hesitated, taking a breath. She's back in town. And she's looking for you. The murmurs in the diner softened, shifting into a thick silence. Sarah's heart dropped. After everything, how could this happen? Her mother had been a ghost, lingering in the background of her life, and now she was suddenly back, like an unwelcome storm. Did you talk to her? Sarah's heart raced. This was a twist she hadn't seen coming. No, but I heard she's been asking around, Mark said, urgency lacing his words. You need to be careful. You know how she is. Sarah swallowed hard. Her mother was a whirlwind of chaos and drama, and the last thing she wanted was to deal with that now. Not when she was trying to build something new, something for her child. The stranger from earlier, still taking in the scene, stepped closer, sensing the shift in energy. Sarah, she said gently. You have a choice. You don't have to go back to old patterns. You've got a chance to create so much right here. But the words felt distant, like echoes fading into the background. The anxiety that clutched at her was suffocating. The thrill of possibility she felt moments ago was being drowned out by memories of her mother's tantrums, the chaos that always followed. What is going on? Her father finally spoke, his voice a harsh whisper. Uncertainty flickered across his face, a mix of concern and anger. Is this true, Sarah? Do you want to see her? I don't know. She shot back, frustration boiling over. She never cared before. Why no? Because people change. Mark began but hesitated under the weight of her glare. You don't know her like I do, Sarah interrupted, her heart pounding. She's unpredictable. I can't just let her back in. Mark stepped closer, trying to bridge the chasm that was growing between them. But don't you want answers? You deserve to know why she left and why she's back now. The stranger chimed in, her voice calm and steady. You need to protect your peace, Sarah. Decide if you want to engage or keep moving forward with your life. It's your choice. Those words hung heavy in the air. Sarah glanced around the diner, faces filled with concern and curiosity. Just moments ago, she had felt empowered, but now she felt unmoored, tossed amidst the waves of uncertainty. Sarah Mark's voice was softer now, gentler. You're stronger than you think. No matter what, you have your child to think about. She swallowed, the knot tightening in her throat. The thought of facing her mother loomed, but the urge for answers burned within her. Could she really confront the past? And then, just as she was about to speak, more murmurs erupted in the diner, drawing everyone's attention to the doorway once again. Another figure entered, this time a man, his face hidden beneath a baseball cap, but the aura of authority he carried was unmistakable. I'm looking for Sarah, he called out, his voice deep and commanding. What did he want? Why was he here? The weight of the moment pressed down on her like a heavy fog, thickening the uncertainty. Who are you? Sarah shot back, feeling every eye in the diner turn towards her. But the man stepped forward unfazed. I have something to tell you that might change everything. An electric tension surged through the room. What more could be thrown into the mix? What revelation awaited her in this whirlwind of chaos? The man's voice hung in the air like a sword, cutting through the tension that gripped the diner. Sarah felt her pulse quicken, the crowd's curiosity turning into a palpable weight on her shoulders. She had half a mind to bolt out the door, to escape this impending storm. But she was anchored by the gazes around her, especially Mark's filled with concern and something else she couldn't quite place. What do you mean change everything? She managed to drag out, feeling her voice quivering. The man, still concealed beneath his cap, took a deliberate step forward. I can't talk here. It's not safe. But you need to listen to me. It's about your mother and more. At that, nerves fluttered in Sarah's stomach, twisting fiercely. More? What could possibly be more than her mother's unexpected return? Just tell me. She urged, her frustration bursting free. What does she want? He hesitated, then pulled out a small device from his pocket, tapping at it purposefully. Her return means something significant is at stake, something dangerous. I know you think you want to hear her side of the story, but what you learn might put your life at risk. Gasps rippled through the diner, sharp intakes of breath that echoed her own rising panic. She could feel the weight of public scrutiny, the kitchen staff peering out, patrons leaning over the booths to catch every word. Danger? Mark interjected, stepping slightly in front of Sarah, the protective instinct evident in his posture. What kind of danger? Let us not alarm anyone further here. The man's tone became pointed as he scanned the faces around them. I promise, Sarah, this is about more than just a simple reunion. It involves a lot of shadows from the past. You should meet me. Alone. Are you crazy? I'm not meeting you alone. She took a step back, each heartbeat thundering in her ears. The very thought of facing a man cloaked in mystery made her stomach turn. Mark looked torn, glancing between Sarah and the stranger. Maybe we should just hear him out, at least get a sense of what's going on, he suggested, his voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. No. We have to think this through, Sarah replied fiercely, though doubt crept in like a thief. Could she risk putting herself in another precarious position, thinking of her child, her own safety? The stranger's eyes softened a fraction. I know this is overwhelming. But the truth will hurt you more if you leave it buried. You need to be prepared for what's to come, or it will come for you. What did you say? Her voice barely masked the tremor of fear. What do you mean it will come for me? A tense silence blanketed the diner. Mark's reassuring presence turned to something more serious, a deep-rooted concern etched on his face. Maybe we should just find your mom. Confront her together. Control the narrative. Control? The word ignited something in her. This chaos wasn't something she could control. She felt branches from her past reaching toward her again, and all she could picture was being dragged down into that darkness once more. The man's gaze bore into hers, and the gravity in his next words weighted her like a stone. You need to trust your instincts, Sarah. What your mother left behind may be worse than what you fear. I can help you understand why she was in your life, even when she wasn't. His statement reverberated in her mind, countless thoughts spiraling as fast as the fear coursing through her veins. She had to make a choice, and fast. Fight against the chaos of her past or risk being consumed by it. And as if a dam had burst, her past collided into her present, threatening to ruin everything. I need time, she finally said, her voice trembling. What if I don't want to know? Then you might lose everything, he replied. The certainty in his tone left no room for doubt. Panic offered no comfort, but neither did the thought of facing her mother alone. As Sarah stood, caught in the maelstrom of emotions and decisions, she couldn't shake the feeling that, in a matter of moments, her world would flip yet again. What would she choose to protect? Herself or the truth? Just then, the door opened again, and the world around her exhaled sharply. The familiar figure of her mother filled the doorway, her expression unreadable, but with a fire that promised both danger and revelation. What fate awaited her now with her mother standing before her? Would she find answers, or simply more chaos? Sarah's heart raced as she locked eyes with her mother. Years of longing and hurt coiled tightly in her chest. The diner, once buzzing with murmurs and the clinking of dishes, faded into a mere backdrop for this monumental moment. The figure that stood before her was at once familiar and foreign, her mother, yet a stranger. What are you doing here? Sarah's voice came out louder than she intended, breaking through a sudden stillness. She didn't want to show how shaken she felt, but her defenses were slipping fast. Her mother stepped further inside, an air of confidence radiating from her. Sarah, we need to talk. The tone was firm but layered with an emotion that bordered on desperation. Sarah couldn't tell if it was for herself or for her daughter. The promise of danger hung like a cloud overhead, thickening the air between them. The man stepped back, blending into the crowd, yet Sarah felt the weight of his presence lingering. Mark shifted beside her, his body tense, ready to shield her from whatever might come next. Talk? Sarah echoed, the word tasting bitter on her tongue. You just show up after all these years and expect me to sit down for a chat? It's not just about you and me, Sarah, her mother replied, her voice steady but edged with urgency. It's about what I left behind, a mess that is catching up to both of us. The truth of those words hung in the air. Sarah scrutinized her mother's expression, searching for any hint of sincerity. What could possibly be worse than the years of silence, the pain of abandonment? Lies? Secrets? That's what you left me with, she fired back, the anger in her voice echoing against the diner walls. I don't know what more you think you can possibly say. I know, her mother murmured, almost to herself. Believe me, I didn't want to leave, but I had no choice. Mark interjected, maybe you should explain what you mean about danger, what's going on? His protective instinct was a silent reassurance to Sarah, urging her to at least hear her mother out. Because, Sarah, her mother answered, there are people who want to keep the past buried. And they will do anything to make that happen. The words sent chills down Sarah's spine. What people? What have you gotten yourself into? Things you wouldn't believe, her mother said, stepping closer to bridge the gap between them. Bigger than just family drama. I thought I was protecting you, but now it's gone too far. I should have told you long ago. As she spoke, Sarah couldn't help but notice the flicker of emotion in her mother's eyes, a mix of fear and regret. For a moment, a part of her yearned to reach out, to bridge the chasm separating them. But fear gripped her tight. You mean to say my life has been at risk because of your choices? Not just yours, your daughter too, the woman whispered, and her face fell. She is in jeopardy because of the choices I made. Don't you ever say my daughter is in danger. Sarah felt the room spin. The thought of anyone threatening her child sent panic coursing through her veins. She knew she had to act, but how? Mark stepped protectively in front of Sarah, his hands balled into fists. What do we need to do? Just tell us. Meet me tomorrow night, away from here, the mother insisted, her gaze fierce. I'll explain everything. I promise you won't regret it. But it has to be done away from prying eyes. A wave of uncertainty washed over Sarah. She wanted to scream, to reject this madness, but her heart was heavy with dread. And if I don't? Her mother paused, tears welling in her eyes. Then you keep running from the truth. And I fear, she hesitated, it won't stay hidden for long. Sarah felt the world blur again. The dreams of a normal life, the threats against her family, it was all too much, spinning into unimaginable chaos. But somewhere deep down, buried under layers of hurt and doubt, the desire to understand clawed at her heart. What lies ahead? What awaited her in her mother's truths? Would they bring clarity, or plunge her deeper into darkness? As the tension in the diner thickened again, all Sarah could think was the time for choices had arrived. The next morning, Sarah awoke with a start. The sunlight streamed through her bedroom window, casting stripes across the room. It felt almost peaceful, a sharp contrast to the storm swirling in her mind. Thoughts of her mother's warning echoed through her head. Danger, secrets, the life of her daughter at stake. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and allowed the cool wood floor to ground her. What was she going to do? Mark stirred beside her, sensing her unrest. You okay? He mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. The concern in his eyes reminded her how lucky she was. He had always been a rock for her, especially when the weight of the past felt unbearable. I have to see her, Sarah said quietly, almost to herself. I have to know what she means. Are you sure that's a good idea? Mark sat up, running a hand through his messy hair. She just dropped this bomb on you. We don't even know what she's mixed up in. Exactly. I can't just ignore it, she insisted, a mixture of determination and fear coursing through her. I need to protect Emma. I need to know what's going on. Mark sighed, his expression softening. All right, but I'm going with you. Whatever it is, we face it together. The prospect of confronting her past filled her with a mix of dread and anticipation. She got through breakfast in a daze, her hands shaking around her coffee. A few hours later, Sarah stood in front of the meeting spot her mother had designated, a park tucked away in the outskirts of town, where only the brave or desperate came to linger. The trees loomed overhead, their branches swaying softly, creating an eerie atmosphere. Do you think she'll show? Mark asked, scanning the park like an experienced lookout. She will, Sarah replied, though doubt had begun to creep into her voice. What if she didn't? The thought alone made her stomach churn. Minutes stretched into hours, and just when Sarah thought about leaving, she saw the familiar figure emerge from the tree line. Her mother approached with urgency, wearing a long coat that flapped against her legs. Sarah. Her voice rang out, cutting through the silence. Why here? Sarah's voice wavered as she took a step toward her mother, desperate to understand. Why not somewhere else? Because it's the only location where I can safely speak, her mother replied hurriedly. We can't stay out in the open for long. Mark stepped closer to Sarah, the tension in the air palpable. Just tell us what's going on, he pressed. Her mother took a deep breath, clearly weighing her words. There are people, powerful people, who want to control this story. They want to stop until they see what they've hidden out in the open, and they are persistent. They want to think twice about coming after you or Emma. Shock coursed through Sarah as memories suddenly flooded her mind, whispers among family gatherings, hushed conversations that she'd never fully grasped. What did you do? What did you get involved in? I need you to trust me, her mother pleaded. There's so much more to this than you know. You've been living a lie, and I thought it was for your own good. But now her voice broke, desperation creeping in. Now I see the danger that it brought. Sarah's heart raced, the walls closing in. How could you think that leaving us behind was protecting us? Her mother stepped closer, face stricken with regret. It was the only choice I thought I had. Before Sarah could respond, a rustle nearby caught her attention. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw figures emerging from the shadows, faces obscured, unmistakably menacing. Her blood ran cold. "Stay close," Mark shouted, his protective instincts kicking in. "Run," her mother cried, panic erupting in her voice. With a jolt, Sarah grabbed Emma's hand, heart hammering in her chest. They turned to flee, but as fear took hold, Sarah wondered if this was the moment her childhood nightmares would spill into reality. Would she lose everything? As they dashed through the park, the sound of footsteps echoed behind them, relentless and closing in. What had she unleashed? With every hurried breath, Sarah felt the terrifying truth. Her time for choices was quickly running out. What awaited them in the shadows? The chase had just begun. They ran, adrenaline propelling them forward, but Sarah's mind was a whirlwind. It wasn't just her safety on the line, but Emma's innocence shattered by shadows that shouldn't have even existed. She glanced back, heart pounding. The figures were gaining. "Faster," Mark urged, pulling Sarah and Emma along as they pushed through the dense trees. Branches clawed at their clothes, but she barely felt the sting. All she knew was the desperate need to keep moving, to escape the terror that threatened to swallow them whole. "Where do we go?" Sarah yelled, panic creeping into her voice. The park was familiar, but now it felt like a maze leading nowhere. "Just keep running," Mark replied, his eyes focused ahead. There was determination in his voice, a steadiness she desperately needed. Ahead, a clearing loomed, but it also offered no cover. Sarah's chest tightened. Would they be exposed out in the open? She could hear the footsteps behind them, heavier and more persistent with every breath she took. "Stop. Please, I can explain." Her mother's voice broke through the chaos, sending a shock wave through Sarah. The thought of her mother confronting those menacing figures while they escaped was too much to bear. "Mom, please come with us." "I can't," her mother's voice shrieked, filled with anguish. "You have to take Emma and get away." "No," Sarah screamed back, torn between loyalty to her mother and protection for Emma. Mark tightened his grip on Sarah, pulling her forward. "We need to go. We can't think about that now." But the moment felt too heavy to dismiss. Her mother was sacrificing everything, and it was tearing Sarah apart inside. "Mom," she cried again, desperate, the tears pooling in her eyes. Then, all at once, they burst into the clearing. The sunlight hit her like a blanket of warmth, highlighting the path ahead, but it quickly faded as Sarah's heart sank. A group of men stood waiting, silhouetted against the bright sky. They were powerful, and Sarah felt it in her bones. "Get behind me," Mark shouted, but the instinct to protect Emma tore through her like a jagged knife. "Stay close," she urged Emma, but the child, sensing the danger too, clung tighter to her hand. "What are you doing here?" one of the men said, stepping forward, voice smooth and condescending. He had an icy smile that made Sarah want to recoil. "This is a private matter. Leave us alone." Mark positioned himself in front of Sarah and Emma, a shield of fierce determination. "You're not getting to her." They pressed back, menacing movement reflecting the urgency of the moment. Sarah's heart raced, and she could feel the fear radiate from Emma like an electric current. In that moment, time seemed to halt. Sarah's thoughts whirled. They were trapped, and she had to act. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. "You have something we need," the lead man replied, his eyes narrowing. "Your mother has stirred things up, and now you're a part of it. Hand over the information, and we can make this easy." The gravity of his words dropped like a stone in her stomach. "What information?" "Don't play dumb," he snapped, stepping closer. "Your mother knows what's at stake, and so do you." Suddenly, Sarah realized that her mother had left her in the dark on purpose. There were secrets, lies, and a world she had never wanted to know. Just as she was about to respond, a hand shot from nowhere, grabbing Emma. "Let her go," Sarah screamed, lunging forward. Mark surged alongside her, fury igniting every fiber of his being, but they were outnumbered, and as her heart stopped, Sarah knew that everything she loved was at risk. What have I done? Sarah thought, feeling the weight of the moment crush down. In a split second, everything could crumble. Would they get out of this alive? Then the unmistakable sound of sirens in the distance pierced through the tension, bringing a fleeting hope. Could help be on the way? The figures hesitated. The chance to escape was near, but would they make it? What lay ahead was shrouded in fear, yet Sarah realized she must choose, stand and fight or run toward the unknown. As dread seeped into every crack of her resolve, she knew one thing for sure: she would protect Emma, even if it meant diving headfirst into a darkness she couldn't yet fathom. What if the sirens weren't the only thing racing toward them? In that moment, they were anything but safe. Would help truly arrive, or had they walked into a trap? The next decision could change everything. The sirens grew louder, closing in, yet the tension remained thick in the air. Sarah's heart ticked in time with every approaching wail, but the chaos surrounding them felt heavier, the threat looming even larger. "Stop!" the lead man shouted, his icy demeanor cracking for a moment. He gestured for his companions to hold Emma tighter, and the child whimpered softly, clinging to the fear that clouded her eyes. "Let her go!" Sarah yelled, determination surging through her. "Listen to me," the man hissed, his expression a mask of frustration. "You're caught up in something much bigger than you can understand. Just hand over what you know about your mother, and this can all end peacefully." Mark shifted beside Sarah, his muscles tense, ready to leap into action at any moment. "You're threatening a child," he growled through gritted teeth, his protective instincts boiling over. "You'll regret this." The men exchanged looks, their confidence wavering as the sirens grew closer. Just then, as if to emphasize Sarah's resolve, she stood tall. "I won't let you hurt my daughter or my mother anymore. You think threats will work on me? Not anymore." Her voice was fierce, reverberating with a strength she didn't know she had. "Foolish girl," the lead man said, smirking. "We have what we want. You don't know what you're up against." But she realized then he was right about one thing: she may not know everything, but she had come too far to back down now. Everyone around her had shown her support, had rallied behind her. She felt that warmth wash over her and steady her heart. "Mom," she shouted, searching the faces in the crowd for her mother. What if she could just catch a glimpse, a sign of strength in this moment? Suddenly, a familiar figure emerged from behind a large oak tree, stepping forward with a look of fierce determination. Her mother's eyes locked onto Sarah's, a shared understanding passing silently between them. "Sarah, you have to trust me. This isn't what it seems." Before Sarah could even process her mother's words, the lead man made his move. "Enough. This time, it's not just about you running. You're tangled in this now." The moment hung in the air like a pendulum, every second stretching painfully with uncertainty. Then, as if an unseen force surged through her, Sarah felt her heart break, tearing free. "You're wrong. What kind of mother do you think I am?" The question hung in the air dangerously. "I will do whatever it takes to protect my daughter, but not at the cost of running back to your lies. Not this time." Mark leaned closer, whispering urgently, "Sarah, now might be our only chance when the cops arrive. We need to find a way to distract them enough." The lead man bellowed, stepping forward, but this time Sarah was ready. The seconds felt like they transformed into slow motion. She didn't just see fear in her child's eyes, she saw a shadow of resilience, a deep-rooted strength forged from her own struggles. The realization struck harder than any threat could. Everything she feared? Everything that held her back? She could redefine it. "I won't back down." And at that moment, she lunged, moving forward toward the figures, determination electrifying her every move. "Emma, stay close," she shouted, reaching for her daughter, but the men were faster, their grip tightening. But just then, before they could grasp fully what was happening, the piercing sirens cut through. "Help is here," someone cried from the distance, and the lead men hesitated, eyes darting nervously toward the shrieking lights now flashing outside the park. "Run!" Mark yelled, grabbing Sarah's hand and pulling her through the growing chaos. "Where's Emma?" Sarah screamed, fear slicing through her once more. "I'll get her," Mark shouted back, his expression fueled by urgency as he darted toward the men, his every instinct screaming to protect. Chaos erupted as the first officers arrived, stumbling into the clearing, eyes wide. "Show me your hands," a cop shouted, pointing toward the men, unholstering his weapon. The sound of authority changed everything. The men froze, looking to each other in confusion as they became painfully aware of their dwindling options. "Release the child," another officer commanded, closing in. The lead man was suddenly caught between a rock and a hard place, realizing they were cornered. But before he could think, a burst of adrenaline surged through him. "Go!" he bellowed, but those seconds felt like eternities to Sarah. "Mark! Emma!" she called, frantically searching until she spotted Emma, eyes wide, and Mark, standing defiantly against the men threatening to take her away. Mark acted swiftly, his protective nature kicking in. "Get back!" he shouted, eyes blazing as he pushed himself between Emma and the approaching figures. "Mark!" Sarah cried as her heartbeat raced, watching her whole world hang in a delicate balance. But she was not ready to sit back. Not anymore. "Wait!" she shouted, feeling raw energy pulse through her veins. "This doesn't have to end this way. We can fight back. Help is here." "It's too late." One of the figures spat, wild panic setting in. Mark grabbed Emma's hand tightly as the officers closed in, a tangle of limbs and chaos as everyone scrambled to grasp their next moves. In that moment, Sarah stepped forward, voice steady. "Let her go. You don't have to hurt anyone. There's strength in numbers. This isn't just our fight, it's a fight for the truth." The lead man turned, paling at the sudden change of the game. "You think your mother can shield you?" he hissed, realizing time was slipping through his fingers. "You think you can change your story?" And in that moment, Sarah saw it clear as day. "I can and I will." Every ounce of fear and uncertainty was eclipsed by a fierce determination. With a sudden move, an officer intervened, reaching toward Emma, and before anyone realized what was happening, Sarah dove in, sheer adrenaline leading her. "Stay behind me," she shouted, leveraging her voice like a sword, but what came next was what truly changed everything. Every person in that clearing felt the weight of that moment. They were not individually alone anymore. The officers closed ranks, commanding the scene. The lead man faltered as he realized he was no longer in charge. "Hands in the air," one officer yelled, and a change washed over the men. The power they clung to was suddenly vanishing. They were no match for the unity of those who stood resolute. As the officers directed the individuals back, Sarah felt the warmth of Emma beside her like a shield, and for the first time in a long time, she breathed freely. It felt like freedom. The fear she had held on to was slowly scraping away the chains that had held her back. As the officers secured the scene, confusion began to dissolve. The men were apprehended, uncertain expressions replacing their bravado. "We did it," Sarah whispered, her heart racing not from fear, but from the exhilarating rush of reclaiming her story. They stood together, breathing in the moment where fear was no longer their prison. Before long, Mark turned to Sarah, eyes bright with conviction. "We're okay. We made it." She nodded, tears stinging her eyes, realizing the depth of love stitched together in that moment. "We found our strength together." In that bittersweet release, they had rewritten the rules of their lives. As the weight of the past faded, a new future filled with hope and possibility glimmered on the horizon. But it didn't end there, and she wouldn't ever back down again. Their fight for the truth had just begun. Now it was time for her final stand for herself, for Emma, for a life worth living, one where love would always conquer fear. It was a reset, a new chapter beyond their wildest dreams. And as she stepped forward, ready to forge her own path, she felt every ounce of support lift her higher. This was not just about survival any longer, it was about victory and renewal. She knew it was her moment. A transformation deep within her heart was taking root. Together, they would write the most incredible story yet. This was just the beginning. If you found inspiration in Sarah's journey, don't wait not even one more second. subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment with your reactions and feelings about this ending, and let us know how Sarah's story impacted you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.